On this channel, $1 Million Made Easy, we love to run numbers for people, and what we do is use the S&P 500 for the last 100 years. These are the actual returns. I got this request. I'm 54 and have 1.5 million in my 401k. I have a pension of $950 a month at retirement. What year can I actually retire? I'll probably work until 64, but curious if that is really necessary. So most of you who watched this channel before know I'm very uncomfortable running numbers for less than 30 years or 20 years, and to run it for just 5 or 10 is really problematic. Why do I say that? Because you can get a decade like the 2000s. There was 4 down years. You could have a really good decade the very next decade, the 20 teens. I'm going to go ahead and run the numbers. I actually made this right here, 1.5 million. I'm going to go ahead and make sure I updated this right. And the reason I really hesitate to do it is because you could have a down year, down several years, where even though you start out with 1.5 million, look at this. In the worst case scenario for a 5-year period, you'd have almost half of that left. In other words, instead of going up in value, it went down in value. And all the way across it, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years, every one of those, you can see them right down here, didn't even make it back to the 1.5 million that you started with. Because why? The market went down. You had these down years. That 1.5 million was taking a hit. Whether it's in this scenario or if you started here, you were down 40% after the first 2 years. So that's why I really am hesitant to run it for less than 20 years. I really would like to have at least 30 years. But he wanted me to run the numbers because he said he wanted to know uh, if he'd be able to retire. So here are the actual numbers, and I broke it down. If you would just go for next 5 years, 88% of the time he'd have his 1.5 million back. 72% of the time he'd have $2 million, and 33% of the time he'd have $3 million. But you don't know which of the years are going to happen, and it doesn't get much better. With the 6 years, you got 91% of the time you'd have your money back. 76% of the time you get to 2 million, and 43% of the time you get to 3 million. Let's just look at the 10-year run, which is what he said. He's 54 and he said he'd probably work till 64, but was curious. If he does go till 64, uh, there is a couple in there that he wouldn't even get his money back, the 1.5 million. And we're assuming that he's not putting any more money in. He didn't have me run any more numbers to see if he was going to continue to add to that, so I didn't do that. But 96% of the time over a 10-year period, you have 1.5 million. 90% of the time, you'd have over 2 million, color coded in blue. And 70% of the time, you'd actually have doubled his money in the next 10 years. But we don't know which of the years are going to show up, and that's why I really hesitate to run the numbers. But let's go ahead and say he has 1.5 million right now. He doesn't, let's just stay with the 1.5 million. Now let's say he's got the pension of $950. So when he retires, that very first year, he's getting $950. And I ran the numbers for every single year for the last 100 years. And let's say he needs 6,000 a month. That's what he's going to need in retirement. How often would he have run out of money? With this 6,000 and taking the $950 off of that, he'd only need 5,050 the first year out of his nest egg, and then we're going to increase that. Let's go ahead and increase that by 3% a year. We're going to update this. Since he's really close to the 4% rule, I don't think he's going to have a problem except right here in 1929. Let's go ahead and run the numbers. Okay, 1929 and actually 1930, because those were such horrible years. But every other scenario, right now, if he didn't add another dime to his 1.5 million, and he retired, this is the kind of money he could look forward to. The market continues to do what it's been doing for the last decade. Again, we don't know whether it's going to have 1930 type returns, the 2000 type returns, both really down decades, or some really good decades like the 80s, 90s, and 20 teens. But in most every scenario, he'd be fine. In fact, the only time he'd have a problem is 1929, 1930, given this scenario, if he needed 6,000 a month. He didn't specify how much he needed a month. If we go up to 7,000 a month, that's what we can do in this channel, run all kinds of different numbers. I'm also, by the way, doing a 70-30 split. We're doing an asset allocation, 70% staying in the S&P 500 and 30% going over to cash reserve. So when the market's going down, you're taking money out of the cash reserve, so you're not knocking this down even farther. Let's go ahead and update this and see that difference that $1,000 a month might make Just 1% of the time he run out of money in 20 years, 4% in 20 years with a 7,000 a month. So it looks like he's going to be in really good shape. This is the actual graph just during the Depression years and around the year 2000. Those were the two problematic time periods. 95% of the time he'd have a success rate over 30 years and 96% of the time over 20 years. So it looks like he's in great shape. And again, if he would leave it in the S&P 500 and the market would happen to go down, he'd happen to hit a stretch like this, he'd probably be pinching himself saying, why did I do that? But he wanted me to run the numbers, so that's what I did. That's what I do for people. I love running numbers for people. If you want me to run your numbers, just give me your beginning balance, your monthly contribution if you're contributing, if you're accumulating, or your withdrawal, the amount you want to withdraw, and if there's going to be a COLA, and it's best if we run at least 20 years in the accumulation stage. I really like it when we do 30 years or more. Anyway, please consider subscribing, sharing, and liking these videos. Let other people know there's a channel out there that will run numbers for them, just like we did in this case today. Thanks for watching.